We just made $27,825 in 43 days, all from our radio ad. Let's talk about it. Welcome back, y'all, to another weekly deal breakdown. Like I mentioned, this deal came from our radio ad, and like I always say, I specifically mention in our radio ads that I specialize in buying inherited properties, so we get a lot of deals specifically for that line right there. There was a lot of motivation here for this seller, so when I initially talked to him, I knew this was going to be a deal, and I knew I was going to lock it up at a really good price. First off, this was an inherited property that the seller and his siblings had inherited from their parents. Second, there were over $25,000 owed in taxes, and there were also some city liens that they had to pay on the property. Third, one of the siblings was living in the property and had been living there for some years, but had not paid any taxes and wasn't taking care of the property, so the property was deteriorating. And then fourth, and the final strike for the seller or the brother who called me, his brother was living in the property. Not only was he selling drugs out of the property, but he was also renting out rooms to crackheads or drug addicts, and they were literally paying. Now, where they got this money from, I don't know. But when I walked the property, there were crackheads there. Some were sleeping on the couch. It was a 3-bedroom house. 2 of the bedrooms were occupied. They had the doors locked. I could not even see those bedrooms in my initial walkthrough. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's just got company. But as we went through the process, the seller ended up telling us, yeah, my brother's living there. He's renting out these rooms to these drug addicts that he's selling drugs to. So, I mean, it was a crazy situation, but I can't even be mad at the brother. He didn't have a job. He was getting disability checks. But in order for him to make money, he was selling drugs and also allowing the people who were paying him for the drugs to live there, and he was charging by the room. He was charging a guy to sleep on the couch in the living room. Now, I don't hate on nobody hustle, and I'm definitely not one to shortstop somebody bread, but it was time for the house to be sold, so we came in right in time, did what we needed to do, and he still took some money from the sale of the property, so it all worked out in the end. Now, as far as the condition, I would say this property was about a 3. I mean, it was going to be a full gut remodel. It looked bad from the outside. All of the majors needed work. It needed a new roof. It needed foundation work. There were plumbing issues. The electrical was outdated and not into code. Full cosmetic remodel necessary. The kitchen was horrible. The bathroom was horrible. A hole in the kitchen that I almost stepped through. So, I mean, there were a lot of issues with this house. And again, I didn't even get to see the other 2 bedrooms in the house. So we pretty much sold this deal damn near sight unseen, because I could not even get pictures of the full property because of the situation that was taking place inside the house. And when he reached out to me from the radio ad, the seller did not have an initial asking price. He just knew how much they owed in taxes, and he knew that they didn't want the city to move forward with the judgment and auction off the property. So they just wanted to sell it quick, be able to take care of the taxes and the liens on the house, and be able to walk away with something, because there were ultimately 5 heirs to the property. So everybody wanted to walk away with some bread, but get away from the headache at the same time. Based on our experience in the area, I knew off top that we could probably get about $100,000 to $110,000 on a cash offer for this property. And so I wanted to lock it up pretty low. Now, I tested my luck and threw out a cash offer at $68,000. And that offer stuck. He didn't negotiate. He didn't go against the grain at all. He was like, well, if $68,000 is what you can offer, $68,000 is what we'll take. And so we executed a purchase agreement for $68,000. In the Oak Cliff area specifically, we have about 2 to 3 pocket buyers that we know are going to pay cash for any property that we send them under about $125,000. So this fit right in that bubble. We sent this over to a cash buyer who has bought majority of our properties in Oak Cliff. There's one guy, he pays cash, he don't give us no hassle. One of our favorite buyers, arguably. We sent the deal over to him. He let us know off top, I'll take it for $100,000. Perfect. We didn't argue and negotiate with him either. It was a $30K assignment fee to be made, and we was ready to make it. And keep in mind, this buyer pretty much took this deal sight unseen. Now, could we have had a lot more buyers walk the property and potentially have gotten more money? Yes, but again, there was a situation there where the brother was living there, he was selling drugs, and there were also drug addicts living in the house. We didn't want a lot of traffic in there. We wanted to hurry up and get this deal done so everybody can wash their hands and walk away. So we just went ahead and assigned it to him at the $100,000. That was a good deal for us. Then we started to work on some of the other problems that needed to be taken care of. The $32,000 was good enough for us. However, we did not actually make the full $32,000. We ended up walking away with $27,825, which leaves about $4,175 on the table. We ended up giving a credit to the buyer of $4,000, and I'll tell you guys why. Before closing, the buyer just drove by the house. He didn't go in, but he did drive by the house, and he noticed that there was water running from the inside of the house all the way down the driveway, which let us know that there was a leak somewhere on the property. Okay, now the buyer called us, we called the seller and let him know, hey, you need to tell your brother that there's a leak in the house. Y'all probably need to have the water company come out and turn the water off, because we don't expect for y'all to get the pipes fixed, call a plumber, or do anything like that. Just have the water shut off, because we're about to get the property closed on. The seller said, okay, no problem. I'll reach out to my brother. We'll get it taken care of. Well, that never happened, but we never talked about it again. And so when it came time for closing, the buyer actually did walk the property and noticed that there was a lot of water damage. Now, even though the house was in really bad condition, water damage can bring termites and cause a lot of other issues. So because that was a problem, and on top of that, the brother was supposed to have moved out and kicked all of his roommates out as well. But when the buyer did their final walkthrough and noticed that there was more water damage, the brother was also still not out of the property. But our buyers like to go by and walk the property right before sending the closing funds, just to make sure the home is vacant. And when he did that, the house was not vacant. He could tell that someone had just left out, and then he said he felt like they may have been hiding in the backyard. He didn't really want to go out there and see what was going on, because again, there was a situation going on with a lot of unsavory characters, we'll say. All right, so we didn't want to put our buyer in danger. We just let him know, hey, I don't know if they're all the way out or not. They might not be. The brother is saying that they are, but what we're willing to do is give you a credit of $4,000 if you go ahead and move forward with closing, and then just handle that on the back end on your own. I mean, they have no rights to the property. They don't live there. You shouldn't have to go through an eviction, but in the event that you do, we'll credit you the $4,000. We're always willing and ready to compromise a couple $1,000s to go ahead and get the deal across the finish line. In addition to that issue, we have problems completing the affidavit of heirship since there were 5 heirs. We had some missing dates for marriages and divorces and things like that that needed to be included in the affidavit of heirship. And so I had to put on my detective cap. We have an Ancestry.com account where I go on there and I do research. If family members are missing, if they don't have birth dates, they don't know when so-and-so got married, when so-and-so died, I'm going to jump on that Ancestry.com and figure it out. All right, we get on Ancestry.com, and I mean, go to town. I might spend hours on Ancestry.com just trying to get dates and information needed for affidavit of heirship. So whatever it is that the title company is requiring from the seller, if they don't have that information, we're going to do everything we can to help them. And that's one of the values that we provide to our sellers, and that's one of the reasons why we're so good at affidavits of heirships, to the point where I can say on my radio ad, we specialize in taking care of them, because it's not cap, it's all facts. In addition to the affidavit of heirship problem, the seller had also tried to sell this house previously to another buyer. They ended up not being able to close because the seller could not provide the information needed to complete the affidavit of heirship. And obviously the other buyers were not as resourceful as us in terms of finding the missing information. And so they did have to terminate their contract, or the seller went ghost. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. When it comes to those memos, you never know whose side of the story is true. But bottom line is, another buyer had filed a memorandum of contract on this property, and he wanted $10,000 to release that memorandum of contract. So we had to find that buyer, get his information, talk to him, negotiate him down from wanting $20,000 to settling at $10,000. And even then, the $10,000 came out of the seller's proceeds. We do not pay for memorandums on properties, because ultimately it is the seller's fault that the memorandum was slapped on there, whatever the case may be. So we negotiated the deal and let the seller know, hey, you were supposed to pay $20,000 to get this release. We got it down to $10,000, but it's gonna have to come out of your funds. He understood, and he was on board with getting that done. After all of that, on the day of closing, we sent the mobile notary out to meet with the 5 heirs, the sellers of the property. 4 of them signed, but the one brother who was living there started going crazy pretty much at the signing. And this is information that came from the notary. Said he was yelling, fussing, cussing. He was upset. He didn't want to sign. He wasn't ready to let the house go. Some emotional feelings came up because it was their parents' house. All this jargon, this, that, and the third. But the siblings were able to bring him down and get him to go ahead and sign. Him and the initial seller, his older brother, actually almost got into a fist fight. But the brother who's living there is actually in a wheelchair because he lost his foot from something crazy. So it was a lot going on, but ultimately we were able to get this to the closing table and make that $27,825. And solving all those problems and getting to that check took us 43 days. There's a couple gems I want y'all to take home before I end this video, all right? Number one, don't be scared to drop a low offer. When I first started wholesaling real estate, a guy told me, if your offer doesn't make you uncomfortable, you didn't go low enough. Second, if you do deals like us that are inherited or have dirty titles, I suggest you get an Ancestry.com account because this can help you move a lot of those deals across the closing table instead of terminating them like the initial buyer for this property did before he slapped a memo on it. 3, don't be so pressed for the money that you're not willing to give a seller or buyer credits at closing in order to get the deal across the finish line. There are a lot of things that come up along these transactions that can absolutely kill the deal. Don't make your ego or money one of them, all right? So sometimes you got to compromise or sacrifice to get that deal across the closing table. Hopefully y'all took some value from this deal breakdown. If you didn't, come back next week and I'll drop some more gems. Till next time, y'all, tap in.